Good morning everybody. This is going to be a video on how to photograph orchids. I'm on one of my favourite sites. It's 6:30 in the morning. I got a bit held up by buses and stuff. I won't bore you with all the details. And yeah, so it's a bit later than I wanted to be, but the light's still looking quite nice. So that's going to be a beautiful morning. As much as I love a beautiful sunny day with pure blue skies, it would have been preferable to have at least a few clouds to give a few options. The clouds can make it nice and diffuse lighting, but I've got the bright sun, so I'm going to have to work with it. I've got some things I can do to make it a little bit better. I'm just going to head on into the reserve proper and find some orchids. I've already found a nice clump of tufted vetch, and unfortunately one of the biggest hazards of orchid photography, a nice bit of dog poo. As you probably realised, I'm trying out talking to the phone for my talk to the camera pieces. I have done it before, but I'm trying out using a microphone this time. Just keep an eye out because I have seen some orchids around here. I was here a few weeks ago photographing man orchids and I have seen a couple of clumps already. But that's my first tip, is do always explore your immediate area. If you've never been to a reserve before, it's probably worth having a little bit of a walk around. You don't want to waste the best light, of course, but you also don't want to waste the best light trying to get a good shot of a okay orchid when there's a really nice one around the corner. So yeah, it's one of those balance things you've got to weigh up. I'm just coming up on the first main area of orchids. You can just see those off-white, yellowy, creamy spikes of man orchids in there. Now I could try shooting through the vegetation, which could be quite nice, but I know there's a better spot around the corner. Well, I'm currently standing in one of my favourite orchid spots, and I'm sure you can see why. Plenty of man orchids here. The sun's just coming above the bushes, and it is getting a little bit harsh already, so I'm going to get cracking. First thing I've got to bear in mind is that I've got to stay on the path because it's going to be so easy to trample some orchids or other wildflowers that are coming up around them. I'm going to start off trying to get some standard shots, and it might surprise you to hear that I'm going to shoot with this, my 300mm first of all, partly because the orchids are mostly away from the path, but the other benefit of using 300mm is it gives you a very narrow field of view, which makes it a lot easier to get clean backgrounds. See what I can get. Now really I should be using a tripod, but the anti-shake is good enough on this, I can get away with it. Now it's a bit tricky to get some shots this morning here, as the grass has grown up quite a lot since I was last here. And believe it or not, there's actually too many orchids. It's a record year for them here, and trying to pick one out and have that classic clean background, you know, nothing messy around it shot, is proving quite hard. So I'm going to try and get a bit more creative. I'm going to try and get low and shoot through the vegetation this time. Well, I've got a few shots in a long lens. I'm now switching back to the macro. I'm going to try some stacks with this mini tripod setup I've got here. Well, the light's getting a bit harsh in the sun at the moment, so I've come into a shadier spot, and I've just found this plant called a broom rape. It's a pretty cool plant. It's a parasite and has no chlorophyll, which is why it isn't green, and it just has these flower spikes, quite triffid-like. I'm going to try and get a stack of this as well. So you can probably see I've actually got it slightly out of focus, slightly focused in front of it, which gives time for it to wobble on the first few shots. And even though there's no breeze, I'm going to do at least a couple of them and then recompose. And this is the shot that came out after I stacked it. As you can see, there's a lot of clutter around it, so I can still shoot wide open with stacking, keep it all out of focus. Of course, the stacking gives me the depth of field to get the subject in focus as well, so it's quite a good technique for places like this. Gonna try extreme close up of the flower now. Let's go again. One more time, get a bit more central. Ooh. Man, there's gonna be a lot of photos when I get home. It occurred to me I've not actually tried focus stacking on this camera. I always stack at home, so let's have a quick go, shall we? That's not framed very well, but we'll try anyway. Well, it's been quite productive here. The problem is I've now spent so long here that it's getting on a bit. It's going to be a bit harsh light for the other orchids if I find any, but let's go see what I can find and we'll go from there. Right, well, I've just spotted some, I think they're pyramidal orchids in the meadow over here, so I'm going to see what I can get. Now they're a long way off and they're lower than a lot of the plants around them, so I'm going to try some shooting through the vegetation shots on these. I'm using the 300 to get the reach and it's really nice. There's just a beam of light coming through onto the orchid through this hedgerow. I'm trying different heights, so I've got more or less vegetation in the way, and I'll see which one I like best later when editing. I've now put on the 2x teleconverter so I can get even closer. Well, that pyramidal orchid was a nice little bonus. I was expecting to see some, but not in that little bit of meadow. And it was all covered in dew, so hopefully those photos have come out nicely. I'm now heading down to another spot that in the past has been good for orchids, and a plant that looks quite like an orchid called a round-leaved wintergreen. So let's go see what we can find. Just found these common spotted orchids a couple metres off the path, so I'm going to keep the teleconverter on and see what I can get. Now, a little tip here is to focus on them while you're standing up when you can find them. Get yourself in position roughly the same distance, and it makes it a lot easier to find them when you're doing these through the vegetation shots. As you can see here, I've shot wide open because you're trying to knock everything else out of focus except for the orchid, which with the 2x teleconverter on this 300mm is actually f8. Yeah, you can see the effect's quite nice. These are some of the better round-leaved wintergreens. Most of them are buried in the grass. But I've just found this one, look at that. Sitting lovely out in the open. Well, mostly on this ridge. And just within reach of the path. So let's see what I can get. This is a site you want to see. Loads of common spotted orchids, and there's some in the shade there as well. I'm going to start with the ones in the shade, I think. Some nice ones here, I think I can get a clean background on. So I'm going to start with my macro first. You can just see the sun is hitting that one just right. Oh, it's just coming off it now. But it was hitting it just right. I've got a few nice shots. So typically with orchid shots, you're going to be focusing on the flower, but there's some on the edge here that I might be able to get the whole plant in. So let's see what I can get. Well, I've switched to my wide angle because I just found a really nice orchid in a nice setting with the sun just starting to hit it. So let's see what I can get. I quite like how some of those wide angles came out, so I've now gone even further. I'm going with the fisheye. Just found a nice looking orchid and the sun is just coming round onto it. So I'm going to do one of my cobbled together Heath Robinson setups, balancing the camera on the bag and see what I can get. It's so hot, this emperor dragonfly is sheltering in the shade. Let's see what photos I can get. Unfortunately, it wasn't in a great spot, but I got some grab shots of the emperor dragonfly. Considering the harsh light and strong breeze, it was quite a productive day in the end. But as I mentioned before, 2 weeks previously, I visited the site and photographed some man orchids, which I'm going to show you here. I hope this video has been useful and given you some ideas of how to photograph orchids yourself. I'm planning to run some workshops, so do follow the link below and sign up to my mailing list. And of course, I've got lots more videos like this on the way. Some on insects, one on owls. So do subscribe if that sounds interesting to you. Bye for now.